Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to go over some simple form inputs. Actually, it's going to be several videos because I'd like to focus my attention on how we can just basically create and use an input control, and then we'll have some other videos for how we can, use some JavaScript just to basically get information from that. So this is for my Intro to JavaScript class, and we need to know about a few basic HTML form inputs. And I'm not going to structure these as an official form, meaning I'm not going to use the form tag with the method attribute or the action attribute, because we're going to be using these inputs not really to process a form. We'll do that later in the term. But instead, I do want to have a mechanism in place so that we can gather input from that user, and then we can do stuff with our JavaScript and then provide some output. And we will just do that on the client, on the user's browser. So we need to have some inputs to play around with. First one we're going to check out is going to be the text box, input type text. That's probably the most common one, and there's a lot we can do right away once we start applying a little bit of JavaScript to it. So let's see, I've already got a blank page set up here, nothing too fancy. I'm calling it form inputs. I imagine I'll be using the same page for multiple things. For the students in my JavaScript class, you're also going to be putting together a page kind of like this, just so that I can see that you can make some sample form inputs. Just maybe do 3 or 4 of them, and we'll just attach little functions to them to do something really simple, like maybe changing colors or background colors, something like that. So let's start off with our text box. Now I'm going to go ahead and create an article here to kind of mark off a section, a headline 2 for the text box, standard text box. Now remember, I'm not going to be creating an official form. I'm not using a set of form tags. I'm not even going to use the set of field set tags, which are often used with forms. Instead, we're going to keep it simple, 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 and I'm just going to start off with the good old input tag. Now you'll notice the input tag doesn't have a closing tag. In fact, that is enough to do something. I don't know what it's going to do, but it's going to do something, right? So there's just an input tag. Let's head over to my browser, and sure enough, it's really hard to see, but I got a little text box right there on my page. That is an example of the standard most common input, type equals text. However, you're never just going to leave it like that, of course. Even though it's clearly not necessary, I do like to use the type attribute with text to make it an official text box. Now putting that in there isn't going to do anything dramatic. It still does what it did before, but that is our text box. Now I can't really see it that well, and I do have an intention. Notice I've already got a form element styles. I don't even think I have it linked up here. Let me go ahead and take care of that. I'm just going to go ahead and select this text, but I think I will just go ahead and copy this external link, and I want this to go to my, where is it at? It is my form element styles.css. I want those styles to kick in, and I don't have anything on here for like input type text, but I could easy enough. So I could style input square bracket type equals text. There we go. And then we can do stuff like font size 1.4 ems. Even that's going to be enough. Just doing that is going to make this text box a little bit bigger and that font a little bit bigger. Cool, I'm happy with it. Let's head back over to that input. Okay, so input type text is all we need for that. Now, I don't have a label, so if you just put any text in front of this, that's going to be fine. I'm going to use a set of label tags, and I'll just go ahead and put in something like username colon, and yeah, that's fine. That'll give me a label there. Now, in order to connect the label to the input, then we would use for attributes and ID attributes. And I want you using ID attributes pretty much on every input you create. Makes it a nice way to find it with your script. So ID equals TB for text box user. So TB user, and then in my label tag, I would do for equals TB user. I like it. Now what does that do for me? Well, now I can click on the username label, and it's going to activate that text box. So it increases the usability there. Now that that text box is active, as soon as I type, there we go. So we're in pretty good shape. There's a couple more attributes I'd like to put in this input type text. For instance, something that you might not use too much right away, but there's placeholder equals whatever, and that just means it's going to default have that in there, and when a user clicks, gives it focus and types, that placeholder text is going to be replaced. So placeholder is pretty cool. I'll just go ahead and put in something like enter username. That's a pretty good one. The other one we might use early on is max length. If I can spell it, max length equals, let's say 10. That means this text box is going to hold 10 characters. So if I start typing, I'm going to get to a point to where I can't type any more past 10 characters. So there we go. And the last thing I'll show you here, type equals text can easily be replaced to type equals password, which is really just a text box, but now it gets those little dots. It hides it from you. Notice my text box got restyled because my style sheets is only referring to type equals text. However, if I copy that, comma, oops, let's do that again, paste, comma, paste, and I do type equals password, now both of those input types are going to be styled the same way, so even as a password box, there it is. And by the way, one of your first JavaScript exercises that I would expect is that you could make a little script that, based on clicking a link or clicking a little radio button or clicking a checkbox, you can replace the type password to type text, which means the user's password would be visible. You see a lot of sites do that kind of stuff, and that's all it would take right there. So I think that's pretty good for our input type text box. And then we'll do another video on some other form elements that I want you to be aware of in the basics. Thanks.